Thank you for coming. Because of the weather, some of you came a little late. I want to make sure you take your cell phones off, please. Thank you. I'm sure many of you know the Canadian actor Michael J. Fox. Does that ring a bell, anybody? I remember him especially in the movie Back to the Future, very popular film. Now, Michael J. Fox wrote an autobiography many years ago. He titled it Lucky Man. And in this book, he starts this way. He says, I woke up one morning to find the message in my left hand. It was trembling, shaking. It was not, the message did not come from a fax or a telegram or a memo. If it had been today, he had written this, he would have said, or an email or a text. In fact, he said, my hand was not able to hold anything. The trembling was the message. Now, as we read this, we ask ourselves, message of what? But before I answer this, we also have to know that this trembling he refers to was the beginning of his diagnosis with Parkinson's disease at the young age of 29 in 1991. While incredibly successful and wealthy, he was, just before this diagnosis, going through a very difficult period in his life, the way he was living his life. He said he was drinking more, he neglected his family, he was not aware of others, it was me, and it also almost broke his family relationship. Then he says that this diagnosis became the message, what he calls a real wake-up call. And he writes in that book that the emergence of Parkinson's became the best thing that ever happened to him. Really? He said, what the arrival of this disease did for me is that it forced me to reevaluate every aspect of my life. You see, realizing this truth and what was happening to him, his perception shifted from an understanding that life was not really about what is happening to me, to how can I make a difference with who and what I am. Fame, fortune, which once dominated and nearly destroyed his life, was now replaced by listening, family, giving up, love, generosity. He is not the only one that has had an experience like that, which can lead to a complete turnaround in lifestyle and priorities. I personally know many people who, after being stricken by something they had no control of, changed their views about life, about its meaning and its purpose. Maybe you know some people like that too. You see, it has been said, on their deathbed, no one has ever been heard saying, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had spent more time at the office or making more money or have a bigger house. Whereas, I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I had been more attentive to people around me. That has been heard many times, again and again. I have heard this. But sadly, not everyone managed to recognize their true priorities before it is too late. Now, you may be wondering what this has to do with the season of Advent, which we're starting today. Well, during this holy season, which we call also a season of preparation, Jesus is calling each one of us. We call ourselves his disciples, so he talks to us. He wants us to try to be more aware as to what is important in life. Sure, we have to eat and drink and work and be merry sometime and have fun, but what he's challenging us with is a response to this question I'm going to ask. How and when do we really take the time to really ponder and reflect as to how we live as beloved children of God? How do we live our mission as his brothers and sisters of this same Jesus who came to the world on the first Christmas? Because this is what we are. With this in mind, then the gospel reading of today becomes this challenge to be alert, to be vigilant, to really be aware of the signs in our lives that are creating a message, maybe an alert that maybe all is not well. And it forces us to look at what we are doing to ourselves, what we're doing to others. Because you see, we all know, like I do, that we never know the day nor the hour where something is going to happen to us. It could be only the day of the hour that we need to be a presence to one another, to be there for someone in need, or through our inattention, allow them to remain in their pain, in their need. But we all have to be attentive, because this is what it means to be part of the body of Christ. So the church wants us to take this sacred time to take stock, so to speak, and remind ourselves once again as to what Jesus came to do for us and what he expects in return. Because he knows we can. Because with God everything is possible. With this in mind, then, we should not be surprised to see how Paul, in his letter to the Romans today, gives us the wake-up call that we need as we begin this season of Advent. He tells us that now is the time to somehow wake up once again, because we are starting a new year. We have to be reminding us of this year in, year out, not to become complacent. The time again to be alert, the time to be active, because we're all called to live in God's light. We lit the light today, the first, 3 more to come, to really show that we are indeed children of the light. And we're all asked to not to wallow in our darkness or be swallowed by the false promises that the fake lights of the world illuminating around us are all about. But sadly, many Christians, once again, like every year, will not be different at all from those who don't believe. These seasons will be a time when they will be themselves attracted by these false promises. Look at the invitation the mall's lights have on so many. Invited to shop. Shop till we drop. And we do. We get sucked into debts. We maximize our credit cards. We follow the crowd. We get exhausted. And the day after Christmas, we say, thank God it's over. Can you imagine Christians saying, thank God it's over, yet so many do? Is this what Christmas is all about for us? Isn't Christ the reason for the season? I know the Knights of Columbus used to have these beautiful little buttons you used to put on your lapel. Jesus is the reason for the season. If you spell Christmas, the first letters means Christ. Christ is Christmas. What signs do we need to see and feel that will become the message, not necessarily through our body, but in our hearts, that something is wrong, that our lives need somehow to be equilibrated? This is the reason I try not to put any Christmas decoration in a church proper until the day of. Not too many people do that. Somebody said, oh, the Pope has Christmas decoration in the Vatican before Christmas. I say, so what? And the reason I do this is because I want us all as a Christian community here, especially at Our Lady Queen of the World, to be able to come here during this holy season and be somehow a place of rest, a place to be able to kind of refocus, not to be affected, or I could say infected, by what society out there is promoting. And we need to be able to take the time to have a place to come and prepare ourselves spiritually in order to celebrate with a heart renewed at Christmas, a renewed purpose, a renewed understanding as to who we are and what this Jesus, not born in a mall with thousands of glittering lights, but in a simple creche, illuminated by a single star given by God, who came to give us all on that day a taste of God's life. Indeed, Michael J. Fox had a dramatic conversion experience through a very painful experience of illness and weakness in his own life. His priorities and his purpose were turned upside down as he discovered enduring life-giving values. No wonder the title of his biography is Lucky Man. With this in mind, then, I would suggest that this time of preparation for our remembering of the coming of the Christ child as Christmas can be a wonderful opportunity for each one of us to all discover our true priorities and purpose. And you know what? If we do, we too will be able to say, I am a lucky man. I am a lucky woman. A trembling hand was the first indication of a new world for Michael J. Fox. In our lives, what are the indicators calling us to a life in God? Each one of us will have their own answer to this.